A magnificent Monday afternoon, folks and friends. Denise Osorio here, homegrown and more than glad to bring you PTV News Now. Tops on news leaderboard right now. In his keynote speech to the National Convention of Lawyers in Cebu City last Friday, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. facetiously alluded to how it feels when lawyers pore over documents for hours on end, the way he did in scrutinizing the 4,000-page 2025 proposed national budget in late December prior to inking it into law. Today, amidst the latest stab by close allies to the former president seeking to have the 2025 GAA rejected and trashed by the Supreme Court, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin put out an official statement reminding the Filipino people how the president set a first by rejecting Congress's first version of the 2025 GAA and then realigning billions of pesos into programs and projects that cover and impact more Filipinos. All these revisions in accordance with the rule of law and as permitted by the Constitution and the highest level of transparency. As a result, there are stricter conditions now with regard to budget releases and how they must comply with serving the common good and public welfare going forward. On the eve of what could likely be an announcement by the Department of Agriculture of a food security emergency nationwide to bring down the prices of rice and curb overall inflation, DA Secretary Francisco Laurel Tiu Jr. expressed gratitude for South Korea's latest show of benevolence with a rice donation for the victims of Typhoon Christine last year. The godsend grain donation is part of the ASEAN Emergency Rice Reserves Tier 3 program and covers the provinces hit hard by Christine to include the Ilocos provinces, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, and Bicol regions. 100,040 kilo sacks all in all. The first batch of the grain assistance arrived in December 2024 and punctuated by the second and last tranche of late. For his part, South Korea envoy to the country Lee Sang-hwa said, this move signifies the South Korea's increased cooperation with the Philippines on food security and disaster response. Close to 1 million tons of rice was lost to the combo effects of El Nino, a string of typhoons in the second and third quarters, extreme weather from the monsoon and shear line, volcanic eruptions, and pests. As the first phase of the Israel-Hamas truce winds down and Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu heads to Washington for talks with United States President Donald Trump, Thai-Palestinian terror group released three more hostages in exchange for dozens of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. This could well be the last set of hostages swapped between both sides as the second and way more difficult phase of the truce deal kicks off officially today. VOA's Linda Gradstein reports from Jerusalem.
Keith Siegel, a 65-year-old dual American-Israeli citizen, was one of the 3 hostages freed Saturday after being held by Hamas for nearly 16 months. He and his wife Aviva were kidnapped from their home in Kfar Aza on October 7, 2023, and taken to Gaza in their own car. Aviva was freed in November 2023 and has campaigned tirelessly for his release. Looking thin and pale, Siegel held an emotional reunion with his family and learned that his son was still alive. 2 other American citizens are still being held, as well as 4 who have been declared dead. Also freed were French-Israeli Ofer Calderon and Israeli Yardain Bibas. Additionally, Bibas's wife and 2 young boys were taken hostage. Hamas told him they were killed in an Israeli airstrike. Israel has not been able to confirm their deaths. As part of the ceasefire deal, Israel freed dozens of Palestinian prisoners who were welcomed by cheering crowds. And Israel reopened the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza, which will allow 50 Palestinians daily, each with 3 escorts, to leave Gaza for medical treatment. The first phase of the ceasefire began just 1 day before President Donald Trump took office, and some analysts and Israelis say he is responsible for pushing both Hamas and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toward the deal. Netanyahu says he sees Trump as a great friend of Israel.
I believe that working together again, we will raise the U.S.-Israel alliance to even greater heights. I'm confident that we will complete the defeat of Iran's terror axis and usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for our region.
Negotiations on the second stage of the ceasefire with Hamas are set to begin as Netanyahu becomes the first foreign leader to meet with President Trump at the White House. The second stage calls for all Israeli hostages to be freed, a long-term ceasefire in Gaza, and an Israeli troop withdrawal. Netanyahu is hesitant about moving forward.
The only one that can actually make Netanyahu continue with the deal is President of the U.S., Donald Trump himself.
One of Netanyahu's former hardline coalition partners, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has pulled out of the government, and a second one, Bezalel Smotrich, says he will leave if the government goes ahead with the ceasefire. That could bring down Netanyahu's government and force new elections. At the same time, Israeli analysts say Trump has a broader vision for the Middle East.
We know the two big aims that Trump put on the board. One is to bring all the hostages back. Second is to move forward towards peace, regional peace with Saudi. And we also know that the Saudis will not be able to move forward with such a deal without having a Palestinian component to it.
For Palestinians in Gaza, their top priority is rebuilding. Trump has said that more than 1 million Palestinian refugees could be taken in by Jordan and Egypt, an idea they, as well as the Palestinians, say is a non-starter. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
And we've come to the end of our show this afternoon. Join us later on for the next set of stories for the evening. Denise Osorio here reminding you to stay connected by keeping it here for news you can count on, stories you can trust. And thank you for watching PTV News Now.